so much for being here. My name's Hayley and I love talking about all things books, movies, TV shows, and just everything that I love. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, then please consider subscribing. Today, I'm going to be talking through all of the books that I read in the month of January. And I had a pretty decent month of reading. I read 9 books in total. And for the fact that the first week was still in the holidays and then I had to get straight back into work from the second week of Jan, I feel like I read a pretty decent amount compared to what I thought I would. It feels like it's been a long month. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I feel like January just went on forever. So I will do my best to talk about the books that I read at the start of the month, but that just feels like it was so long ago. So I had a pretty decent range of books that I read this month. I read some contemporary romance, some thrillers, fantasy, and one non-fiction book. So the first book that I read at the start of the year behind me was Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. And this is a romance author that I've read one book from, which was Love Light Farms. That is one of my favorite ever Christmas romances, and also just one of my favorite romance books in general. But I don't know why I haven't read any of her other books yet. But I received this special edition from Illumicrate of Good Spirits, which was her Christmas release last year, and I was obsessed with everything about the look of this book. First of all, there's the edges, I don't know, just like this little antiques and trinket shop, the illustrations. Oh, like how cool. And I was also just really intrigued by the premise. It's also signed by her. And I love this cover as well, so beautiful. So in this one, we follow Harriet and Nolan in dual POVs, and we start the book off in Harriet's point of view. And she owns and runs her family's antique shop called The Crow's Nest, which is this little shop here, which I just love. And she loves her job. She loves everything about the store and her friend slash co-worker, but her life is pretty lonely. She has some trauma from the way that her family treated her when she was growing up, and she's just living a pretty lonely life. So in the first chapter, we go through one whole day of her standard life, working at the Crow's Nest. She gets home and she's sitting by the fireplace, and a man appears in her living room. And we soon figure out that Nolan is the ghost of Christmas past, and then we go through the dual POV chapters of them going back through her past memories and trying to figure out what went wrong in her life and why she is in need of a ghost of Christmas past to be haunting her. So it's such a unique premise. I really was intrigued and it did really work for me. Obviously these two start to develop feelings for each other and slowly start to fall in love, and I really just couldn't figure out how that was going to be resolved in a happy ending. Like, Nolan is a ghost, he's died 100 years ago, and his whole life is this job of trying to fix everyone else's failed lives. But yeah, somehow she wrapped it up at the end in a way that I loved. I loved the happy ending in this. It was just so sweet. There were definitely a lot of things that I related to with Harriet. She has this like people-pleasing side of her, which in her situation, so sad to watch because of the way that her family treat her. And I loved seeing by the end of the book her becoming the person that she wants to be, and she's just done with silencing herself for them and trying to turn herself into something that she's not, to be the person that her family wants her to be. So yeah, there were a couple of little cringy moments, and pretty much all of it was completely unrealistic, obviously, but it was fun and I had a good time. And I really did not expect to have the emotions that I felt at the ending. I think it might be up there with one of my all-time favorite romance book endings. It just really wrapped it up in a way that you felt like they were destined to be together. And yeah, I just ended up having a lot more emotions than I thought I would. So that was Good Spirits. I rated 4.75 stars. I think the main thing that stopped this from being a 5-star read was that it did feel a little bit slow at times. I think the first half I struggled through a few of the chapters that felt a little bit slower, but overall I loved it. And I am ready to get back into BK Borison's other series. These 3 books come after Love Light Farms. So yeah, I need to get into In the Weeds very soon. So the next book that I read was on my Kindle, and it was The Family Next Door by Sally Hepworth. This was my first book by Sally Hepworth, and I was really impressed by her writing, so I definitely want to give her other books a go. The reason that I started this one was because somebody that I know was raving about the TV show, so I heard that it was a book, and I decided to just download it and read it before watching the TV show. And I finished this one at the start of Jan, and I still haven't watched the show, so I really need to get to that. And when I do, I'll let you know how I feel. But I rated the book 3.5 stars. I did like it. I did expect this to be a little bit more of a thriller than it ended up being, and I think that was my expectations going into this that were wrong. I think after reading it, I would describe this as a fun, domestic, Australian literary fiction with a little bit of a mystery involved. And there were a couple of twists that I did enjoy. I think overall my enjoyment level was just a little bit low with this one. I think we follow 4 women who all live on this little cul-de-sac in this rich town in Melbourne, and they're all going through their own issues in their marriages, with their children, with each other, and I think it just felt depressing a lot of the time. Also just made that domestic living as a mother and wife seem hard and depressing. Obviously everyone has problems, but all of the women in this book have serious problems in their life, and it was okay. I did like the twists along the way, and I liked the ending, and I am excited to eventually get into the show, which I've heard is really good. So I'm thinking it might be a more interesting read when you're not in the head of these women as much as you are when you're reading from their point of views. That was The Family Next Door. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, but I rated this one 3.5 stars. It was a pretty mid literary fiction, but I do want to read more from these Australian authors. I want to read some more by her. I can tell that I really enjoyed her writing, so she's someone I will want to get into. So the next book that I finished was Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, which is the 6th book in the Harry Potter series. I've been slowly making my way through these on audio just because I hadn't actually read the book since I was a kid. I love the movies, and I just wanted to see what those little differences in storylines are that everyone's always talking about, the little things that they missed out on in the movies. And I've been loving them. I've rewatched the movies so many times at this point, and they're just like one of those nostalgic childhood favorites for me. And there was a lot more missing from the movies than I expected that I loved. Like some of my favorite parts from the books I'm realizing weren't in the movies at all. So if you haven't, I definitely recommend going back and reading them or listening to them. I've been listening to Stephen Fry's audiobooks, and I just love how he does every character perfectly. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about that. 5 stars to every book in that series. And then right after that, I got into You and Me on Vacation, or I actually read People We Meet on Vacation, which is the American version of the book, on my Kindle, because the movie adaptation came out this month, and it's one of my favorite romance books ever, but I hadn't read it for I think like 3 years. Up until Happy Place was my favorite Emily Henry book, which, unpopular opinion, I feel like, but I was so excited for the movie, and I just felt like I originally read You and Me on Vacation, this version, and so I wanted to pick up People We Meet on Vacation because I had heard they have a slightly different ending. So now I do feel like I need to pick up this one again. Maybe just read the last couple of chapters to compare, because like when I was reading it, it all felt familiar, but I obviously couldn't remember the details, so I don't remember the difference in the endings. So if you don't know People We Meet on Vacation, we follow Poppy and Alex, who are best friends, and in the Now chapter, Poppy is a travel writer, and something had happened a couple of years ago, so Poppy and Alex are no longer speaking. And we go back and forth between the Now chapters and the Then chapters, where we slowly see them meet in college, kind of dislike each other, and then they're kind of forced on this road trip together where they become besties. And then every summer from then until now, they have a yearly trip together, and there's like the build up to where we're trying to figure out what happened 2 summers ago. And in the current chapters, Poppy has convinced Alex to go on one last summer together, to try it one last attempt at their friendship. Right from the first page, I remembered why I love this. I love the descriptions of the places they visit. I love the humour, their banter, so good. And Poppy and Alex both have unique personalities that just gel so well together. They have some of the best banter that I've read in a romance. I even think I enjoyed this rereading it more than I enjoyed it the first time, which I didn't expect because I'm not an overly big rereader, and I think this has convinced me that I need to go back through and read more of my favourites, because I could see myself rereading this one over and over again now. Also, I had seen a lot of the marketing for the movie before doing my reread, and I think it made me love it even more, being able to picture them, the actors, as the characters, and because they're just perfect. So yeah, since reading, I've watched the movie. I loved it. I do wish they didn't change as much as they did. I loved how they did the ending. The ending was completely different from the book, but it worked really well. But it did make me sad how much they left out from the previous summers. But I do also see myself rewatching that movie. I think it could become a comfort movie. It just will sit in my head as a different story to the book. But the book, a 6-star read, one of my favorites ever. Okay, so I just talked about the whole second half of the books that I read this month and realised that I wasn't recording for any of it, so that's fun. We're gonna do this again. So after People We Meet on Vacation, the next book that I picked up was, it has been over a year since I picked up a book in the Shatter Me series, and I started those in September of 2024, when I specifically remember I read the first book when I was flying over to Europe, and I read like all 3 books on that trip with all of the flying that I did, and then I read the 4th book when I got back, and I really struggled with that one. I don't know why. It took me so long to get through, and then it put me in a little bit of a reading slump, and I just decided I needed to take a break from the series, and I accidentally took like a 1.5 year break, so I decided I needed to get back into it, and the next book in the series that I was up to was a novella, and thankfully this turned out to be, like, accidentally probably the best book to get me back into this series, because this one it kind of goes back over the events that happened in the fourth book, but were now in Kenji's point of view. So it goes over it all the events, but it's also a lot quicker. So it kind of caught me up on what happened in the last book. And also I really like Kenji, so it got me excited to read more. The last book ended on a huge cliffhanger, which I'm now just really intrigued to read the next one to find out what happens. I don't know why I didn't feel like that last time, but I'm glad I read this one. And I did read the next book in the series this month as well. It was actually the most recent book that I finished up, so I might as well just talk about that one next. So after Shadow Me, the next book in the series is Defy Me. So this is the next full-length novel, and yeah, like I said, after the big cliffhanger that happened in the last one, I was really intrigued by what's going to happen in this one, and I loved this. I think this might be my favorite book in the series since the first one. In terms of the plot that's happening now, it's just way more intriguing than what was starting to happen in the last couple of books. We're starting to learn a lot more about like Juliet and Warner's backgrounds. There's this whole much bigger picture world that's starting to come out that I feel like we're just focusing on one little part before, and yeah, it just has me intrigued. I obviously can't say too much because this is the fifth book in a series and I don't want to spoil the previous ones, but I do like that we flip between Kenji, Juliet and Warner's point of views. I'm loving Kenji's point of views and I'm loving his little story, kind of side storyline. But yeah, I basically felt hooked and interested this entire book, and I'm very intrigued about where the plot's going, so I'm excited to keep going. I think we only have two novellas and one more full-length book in the series, so very excited for that. And then the next book that I read was also on audio, and I think this was definitely my least favorite book of the month. It was Dust Storm, which is the first book in the Griffith Brothers series, which is kind of a small town cowboy romance by Maggie C. Gates. And I unfortunately rated this one 2.5 stars. I hadn't really heard of anyone talking about this series. The reason I picked it up was because I saw this beautiful special edition and I wanted to give the series a try before I invested in this book. But yeah, it didn't really work for me. I didn't mind the writing style. I think the main things that I didn't love were the characters, and it was a little too smut heavy. So in this we follow Cassandra and Christian. Cassandra has just had a bit of a scandal with one of her clients. She's a PR agent, and so her company basically sends her to this small town to work on this farm to do like their marketing, and Christian is the manager of this farm. So already there's like close proximity because they're going to be living together, and from the start they don't really like it. They come from very different worlds, so they don't get along that well, and then slowly they start to get to know each other, and obviously a romance happens from there. Christian is a single dad. He's got 2 little girls, and I really did like him. He was so sweet, the way that he treated his little girls. You could tell they were his entire life. Like, he learns how to braid their hair and to do any new hairstyle that they want. He's just so sweet when it comes to them. I really didn't love Cassandra. I don't know, she's a very cold, unfriendly and just rude person at the start. Basically for the entire first half of the book, she treats the girls, the kids, really rudely, and she's kind of horrible to them. So I don't understand why they're all okay with that and why they all fall in love with her despite that. And by the end they love her, and she definitely goes through some character development, but not enough in my opinion, and doesn't make up for the fact that she was just so rude for no reason at the start. Yeah, overall it was like a a short, fun, easy to listen country romance, but I think actually the main thing that I didn't like was that there was just way too much smut, in my opinion. I didn't like the amount of it or the smut itself. It was just a little bit cringy. I didn't like some of the lines involved. And also I didn't like the narrator for Christian, which didn't help in that aspect. And just some of the things to do with the storyline. First of all, I was a bit bored by it, but then somehow at the same time it was also really dramatic and unrealistic at times. Like, people reacted in ways that just felt really drastic, and I didn't feel like it was real at all. So yeah, I didn't mind her writing, and I do love a small town series when you start to learn the characters and a bit of a found family is created. So I would be open to trying out the second book, because there have been many times where I hate one book in a romance series and love the next, or the other way around. So I'm willing to try. I'm willing to give it a try. But that one I rated 2.5 stars. Wow, okay. And the next book that I read was Unorthodox, which I think was my favourite book of the month, not including my reread of People We Meet on Vacation. This one I did read a physical copy, but it was borrowed off my friend from work, so I've given it back. And I hadn't really heard of it, but apparently it had been adapted into a Netflix series. And the book is actually a memoir written by Deborah Fieldman about her life. And she grew up in a really strict Hasidic Orthodox Jewish family and community. So it was so interesting to learn about a community of people that I personally knew nothing about. So this is the kind of Judaism where they're strictly religious, and there are relentlessly enforced rules about what a woman can wear, what they can read, who they can talk to, what they can eat. And I went into this with the intent of learning more about Judaism and just to learn more about how those strictly religious Jews live their lives. And this definitely delivered that. I also liked that, apart from just being exposed to a culture that I haven't really grown up knowing much about, this also had a little bit of Deborah's opinion on their history, which was also really interesting to learn about. There were some parts of the book that were definitely heavy and very sad, like just reading about her as a child, living in this cold, unloving family where she doesn't really get any affection, only these strict rules that she needs to adhere to. And everything from her strict home life to her schooling is raising her to become the perfect mother and wife. And then a bit later in the book we get into her arranged marriage as a teenager to a man, which is just so horrible to read. And during that part of her life you can see her anxiety and mental health issues really start to appear, and you can just see how she's been raised to what she's going through now, how it just affects her. But I did love the ending. There was this tone of hopefulness, and we see Deborah finally being free. And then also, because this book that I read was like a republished version for the new Netflix series, there were also new notes at the back of it from Deborah and updates in her life since she wrote this book. So that was really nice to see as well, how she's living her life now. And I definitely need to watch the series. It was just such an eye-opening and interesting read, so I feel like the show would be as well. I have heard it's not completely accurate to her story. It follows her story, but then it's also kind of a it's about a lot of people. It's not strictly just following what she went through, which will be interesting as well. And the last book that I read in the month has a very different tone to the last one. I finally read One Golden Summer by Carley Fortune, which is the sequel to Every Summer After, which is also one of my favourite romances ever. And that romance is also being there's so many book to movie, book to screen adaptations recently, but Every Summer After is also becoming a TV show soon. So I definitely need to do a reread of that. It's been a while since I read that book, and it took a while for the sequel to come out, but I'm so glad she finally did it, because I really did like Charlie in Every Summer After, which I feel like is might not be a popular opinion, but I was really, really excited to finally get his happy ending, and I loved him even more in this. I feel like he's just that perfect golden retriever boy. He's friendly, confident, a little bit flirty, and just really gets along with everyone that he meets. And in this we follow Alice. Alice actually had one summer at the lake where all of the characters from Every Summer After spent their summers too, and she never met them, but she took a photo of them, which has become kind of the start of her photography career, and she labelled that picture One Golden Summer, and that has always been a picture that she has remembered as like the turning point in her life and the inspiration for her career as a photographer, which I love, because even from the start, even though they haven't even met, Alice and Charlie have this connection through this photo. And so she's kind of going through it at the start of this book. She's a very type A personality. She has just been broken up with by her boyfriend, and he has gotten very quickly into another relationship. I think he's already engaged, which is crazy. And she's also not really feeling her career. She's not loving her photography career, or she's not feeling inspired. And so her grandma's not well, and she decides to convince her grandma that they should go back to the house that they spent that one summer when she was a teenager. And so they do, and they spend a summer together. Charlie is also looking after the cottage that they're staying in, so it's really wholesome. It's like the three of them spend this summer together, and I love how Charlie and Alice's grandma, immediately bond, and they just get along so well, and they spend a lot of time together. It's so cute. I love the friendship that Charlie and Alice build, like really quickly, and it becomes quite intense, and you can tell that they're just really important people to each other. I do wish the tension wasn't cut. I think about halfway through the book they start this like friends with benefits kind of on and off again thing, but their main priority is their friendship, and I feel like that just cut the tension a little bit too early. I do think, yeah, that the tension could have been built a little bit better and for a little bit longer, and it would have been a better payoff at the end. But I appreciated that storyline as well. It was cute. As usual, I love Carley Fortune's writing and her settings. She always does the setting of either the city that they're in or the lake town that they're in just so well. I haven't loved every single one of her books. I think I've read all of them at this point, but I've loved her writing in every single one, and I love her settings in every one. And I think the same audiobook narrator is the voice for all of them, and she does the settings perfectly. I don't know why her voice and the settings just go so well in the descriptions. So yeah, I think I'll listen to the audiobook for all of Carley Fortune's books moving forward. I think she's become a new favourite romance author after this one. So that was One Golden Summer. I rated this 4.5 stars, and definitely a new favourite. So that was all of the books that I read so far in January. I am currently in the middle of 3 books, but but I'm pretty sure they're all going to roll over into Feb. I'm reading the next book in the Shadow Me series, which is the next novella, Reveal Me. I'm really excited just to finish off that series and find out what happens in the end and just complete another series would be nice. I also am in the middle of His and Hers, which is another book to screen adaptation. There's a series, I think on Prime. And this is a thriller by Alice Feeney that so far I'm enjoying. It's got the creepy vibes that have been causing me to read it a bit slower, because I'm reading it on my Kindle, which is normally what I read at night before bed, but it's a little bit too creepy. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, and I'm excited to, when I finish it, find out what I think of that show as well. And then I'm also finally reading the last book in the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, number 7. This one is a really long audiobook, so I'm just slowly getting through that, but I'm excited for that series to be over. Not that I'm excited for it to be over, but I'm just excited that I know all of the details of the books now. And some of those audiobooks are so long, so it'll be nice for me to be able to move on to listening to some different audiobooks. But those were all of the books that I read in the month of January. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. If you did like this video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.